just be grateful that you're in a space where people will say a woman is an adult human female. This is why they're here. It's because they want us not be able to say that anymore. Because if we can stop describing what we are, we can stop fighting for what we need.
I just want to read out something from a guy called Nick Hudson. I was listening to a relatively new radio station called TNT Radio. Heard it? Okay, and this is what he said. He said, why are people accepting totally irrational things? Why are people accepting people identifying as something they're not and never can be? Even the sentence, I identify as, you've made a mistake, you've made a cognitive error, you've asserted by implication that you have discovered a way to know what it's like to be something that you're not. That's an axiom. We can assert that it's not possible to know the qualia, the subjective experience of any other entity or any other human being. So the moment you open your mouth and you start saying, I identify as, with the object in that sentence being something that you're not, you've gone off into territory of great irrationality. And yet that kind of statement is completely acceptable in our modern world. It represents the starkest failing of critical thinking right there. And to stand up and to contradict such a person, to say, hold on a second, how do you experience that qualia? How do you experience or manifest something that you're not? Is to commit some kind of heinous crime that can get you fired, that can get you cancelled, that can get you suspended from social media, banned or whatever. To challenge that very assertion, which is imminently challengeable, you require a collapse in cognitive capacity that in my mind can only be explained by a dumbing down process. When you deal in a false narrative, you can't debate. You have to control and censor. I rest my case.
If we are marked to be cancelled, to be Twitter's loss. And if to live, the fewer women, the greater share of honour. I swear down, I am not covetous for gold, nor can I who doth feed upon my cost. It yearns me not if women Posie's garments wear. Such outward things dwell not in my desires. But if it is a sin to covet glory, I am the most offending soul alive. No, faith wish me not another woman from England here. I would not lose so great an honour as one woman more, methinks, would share from me. Rather proclaim it, that she which hath no stomach for this fight, let her depart. Her passport shall be made, and pounds for convey put into her crowdfunder. We would not stand in that woman's company, that fears her fellowship to stand with us. This day is called Speaker's Corner, Brighton! And rouse her at the name of Brighton. She shall live this day and see old age. Will yearly on the vigil feast her neighbours and say, tomorrow is the anniversary of Speaker's Corner. Then she will strip her sleeve and show her merchandise. And say, this merch I bought at Speaker's Corner. Old women will forget, yet all shall be forgot. But she'll remember with advantages what speech she did make that day, and then show our names familiar in her mouth as household words. Kellie Jay Keen Minshall! Julia Long! Bev Jackson and Kate Harris! Maya Forster! And Stephanie Davis We bond as sisters! For she today that sheds her blood with me shall be my sister. Be her ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle her condition, and ladies in Turf Island, now abed, shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their womanhood cheap. And whilst any speaks that stood with us upon Brighton, speakers corner.
There is no subsection of women that includes penises. Transing children is abuse. It's a fiction. It's just mutilating healthy bodies. A woman is an human female. And there are many, I just want to say as well, because DJ Libby always does it really well and I always forget, but thank you to each and every one of you. I know reading on Twitter this morning, some of you were quite nervous about coming, but I promise you, the liberation of being able to stand amongst people and you all know the truth is something that I just feel is really like, it's used often, but it probably is empowering. It will make you feel liberated like nothing else. If you can't tell your work colleagues who wax lyrical about woke crap, you can say it here, you can speak the truth here, and then tomorrow you can speak the truth in your own life, where maybe you've been afraid before. But now I've got to introduce, all the way from LA, it's Ricky Trez and Shiloh Katori.
Everybody, I'm Ricky Trez, and look, I learned a new trick. Just look what. And then you pick it up, and it's really neat. Me and Shiloh, we come today because we wanted to say that we just think you're really cool and awesome to stand up for women's rights. Yeah! Come on, Shiloh. Hey, a trans woman is speaking. Can you shut up? A trans woman is speaking now. Shiloh. Come on, honey. Shiloh and me, on the way over from LA, we were talking about it, and we just want to clear one thing up that we think you might be a bit confused about, and that is, you know, white and men love trans women so much, especially men in the skating community. Skate, cute. They love them. What did you say? What did we say again, Shiloh? Tell me. Oh yeah, okay. It's not because, this is what you're thinking, but it's wrong, okay? It's not because men in the skating community are so deeply closet gay and so massively homophobic that they actually like it and prefer it if men dress up as women and pretend to be. That's not the reason. That's not the reason why, okay? What is it, Shiloh? Oh, it's because the skating community is so full of love, and we love to be inclusive and all that. That's why, okay? Can I go and skate now? Okay, wait a minute. Don't you want to show the nice British ladies your little bottle of piss that you made earlier? Oh, okay, where did you put it? Hold on a minute. Building somewhere in London, or is that the HRCE, I think. And we're gonna put it outside the door with in solidarity with all our trans sisters, because we support them, whatever it is they were protesting about. I don't know, Daffy Duck or something. Anyway, we hope they're feeling better now, and keep drinking water, okay? And live your truth. Live your truth. I'm living mine. I've got to go back to LA now. Do some more skating. Skate. Okay, bye.
They didn't really want to say it, but they just conceded that they would have to go with the guidelines, okay? So this is where we need to get serious. We need to challenge guidelines, all right? Spend one day this month off of Twitter and write some emails, write some letters, go to the Transgender Trend website, download their brand new free school resource pack and use it to challenge your children's school. Our children deserve the right to single-sex spaces based on sex. Gender identity is complete nonsense, okay? Gender identity and trans ideology is a trend! We will laugh this trend out of fashion, because that's what it is, alright? You are going to go out of fashion. And I suppose we will all be here to pick up the pieces. We will probably still be here with open arms for you, especially our female sisters.
I will not have this bullshit of people who do not let women use ordinary, everyday language to say perfectly ordinary, everyday things. I'm sick of people who think that saying men can't be women, women can't be men, only female people can be lesbians. You're born what you're born, make the best of it, be whoever you want to be. I'm tired of people saying that women can't say these things. And even if you wanted to say something different, I wouldn't try and stop you. So screw them. Keep speaking. Thank you, Posie.
So far, I think Maya got the biggest cheer, so it's fine, I just come here all the time, it's fine. Okay, who else would like to speak? You might know her from other such exciting things as making Jack Monroe look like an idiot on BBC Two. It's the lesser spotted Dr. Julia Long.
When an aggressor wants to pursue a murderous, genocidal project upon a group of people, one of the first things they do is to go for the language. So, in the 1930s, and this is an appropriate comparison on this occasion, when in the 1930s, in Nazi Germany, the Nazis brought in the term the master race. Once they had people using that term and speaking that language, it made their genocidal project much easier. It actually followed its own logical end to another term that they used, the final solution. Today, we have a word that is performing a frighteningly, potentially quite similar function, and that word is trans. The word trans has one function, and that is to falsify reality. So, for example, we have here this bunch of misogynist, woman-hating, abusive rabble who are trying to reverse reality by calling us Nazis. Excuse me, who is conducting medical experiments upon children? Just as they did in the concentration camps. Who is pursuing an agenda that paves the way for violent men to violate women with impunity? The trans, remember, that is its function. As soon as you have a word that can institute the lie that a man is a woman, everything is reversed. So you have these bigots calling us bigots. You have men claiming to be women. You have an agenda of violation and persecution reversing the victim and the offender. That's what's going on. When you hear the word trans, what you hear is a lie. Just remember that. There is no such thing as a trans woman. There is no such thing as gender identity. All we hear is men who lie and a lot of foolish people who go along with that, collaborate with that and collude with it. Thanks everyone.
I very recently had to write my mother's eulogy, and I would like to share one story from it that I grew up hearing and continues to resonate with me today. My mum repeatedly told me how as a young woman working in Italy, she had to walk along the lake past all of these caged birds. But one morning, knowing in her gut that it was the right thing to do, and being unable to watch any more suffering, she just opened the cages and set them all free, thereby ending her employment. Everyone gathered here today has recognised a cage, old or new, or just reinstated, be it sexism, the homophobia of calling same-sex attraction either not real, bigoted, or something that can be unlearned. Or they have seen the danger to children, or the bars going up around free speech, and those who question transgender ideology, and in their own way try to open the doors of these cages being thrust upon us, often either threatening or thereby ending their employment. Even those who oppose us, who harass our employers, then use that host us, they've recognised these cages and that there is a problem in society. They have just been fed and swallowed the wrong solution. I'm talking about the zealots, often young women whose idealism and discomfort with discrimination has been exploited. They want to change words and bodies, not systems. They want to paint their cages and claim that in doing this they express their identity, rather than get the bolt cutters and join us. The growing number of detransitioners who have been medically mutilated gives the idea that they, not sex role stereotypes or homophobia, were wrong. Show again and again that the ideology is the problem, not the solution. But women, we are winning. Because when one's ideology, and frankly business, is built on sand, it is easy to overplay your hand. Look at the family sex show. That got closed through parent power as soon as people knew about it. The Cass report, it closed the Tavistock. And Mermaid's bad legal gamble against LGB Alliance. Across the country, we have had quiet wins that are not making headlines. My niece and nephew's school has had to rebuild single-sex toilets. I had to write a lot of letters, and they had to experience all of the predicted problems, but that happened. But still, despite all these wins, we have one hell of a struggle. I wasn't planning to come here today, but someone said true trans, and poof, I appeared. Women are being held back and forced back deliberately. Our analysis of the situation is being kneecapped. The waters are being muddied when we hear, well, sometimes woman is a costume, sometimes children are born wrong, sometimes we have to play along, sometimes domestic abuse, well, that's not domestic abuse, it's stunning. Sometimes kids are kinky. No. And we can't repeal the DRA? No. Why? Explain. Oh, because he is your friend. Piss off. Oh, because, oh, sorry. she has a sex role stereotype discomfort disorder certificate. Jog on, love. I think Emmeline Pankhurst left an important rule that we must all apply. Deeds, not words. And if you personify that which you claim to fight against, if you go into schools and make children participate in your fetish, if I see you coming into the toilets, well then, you're no friend of mine, and you're no friend of women.
There's a nice little chant where they keep going, you're not feminist. I've said that a lot, that I'm not actually a feminist, but I am a woman. And most of us on this side over here, we are grown women. Which is why your tantrums aren't working. And can I just say, the last time when there were masked people and someone did mana do 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 do, that's all I can see when someone's clearly shouting the most heinous, horrible, offensive profanities at me. But because I can't hear a word they're saying, all I hear is mana do 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 do, mana do 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 do, mana do 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 do. Helen Staniland, where are you? Helen, are you fashionable? I am, thank you. I'm a bit deaf. I am very fashion, thank you. Helen Staniland, everybody.
Years ago, you'd go to an event like this and you'd know everyone by name. There were so few of us. And now I look round and it's joyful. There are so many women speaking out about this. I think the first part of the problem has been solved, which is to get people to realise that there's a problem. Now we know, and now we've just got to solve the second part, which is to stop male-born people with a penis entering our spaces.
If 48% of the cohort of children referred to any other paediatric service were autistic, there would be clinicians and researchers crawling over themselves to be the ones to research why. It would be headline news and everybody would be asking why, but not if your child is referred to a gender identity service. In fact, we don't even know how many autistic children the Tavistock referred on to medical pathways because they didn't bother keeping any data. We have charities who represent the autistic community in the UK. The biggest one is the National Autistic Society, and they are looking the other way. They are ignoring what's in front of their faces and ignoring what's happening to autistic children right in front of them. They're so blinded by the idea that you are who you say you are that they're ignoring what they already know. That growing up autistic, and I speak from experience, can be lonely, isolating, confusing, terrifying, and lead to huge levels of bullying. The United Nations wrote a report decrying the treatment of the disabled population in the UK under the Conservative government. After austerity measures, led to the death of over 100,000 disabled people in the UK. But apparently, they are the most oppressed group in the country. So if anybody from the medical community does decide that it's worth asking questions about why so many autistic children have decided they want to identify as far away from themselves as possible, here are a few suggestions about where they could start. Being autistic is incredibly lonely, not knowing what to say or when to say it, barging into a conversation at the wrong point, speaking too much or too little, being hugely bullied but being so desperate to fit in that we're really easily manipulated and taken advantage of. But autistic kids find transition and change really, really hard to navigate because we can't predict what's going to happen next. But the biggest change that we'll go through is our changing bodies when we go through puberty. The fact that going when you're an autistic girl is horrific. It's sensory, it's unpredictable, it's messy, you can't deal with it. Your body's suddenly growing hair, suddenly getting too tall or too short or too fat or too thin. Never knowing how to change it because you can't change it. And interoception, which is the sense that your brain can decode signals from inside the body. Most autistic children have really low levels of interoception, so they don't get the messages their body are telling them. And alexithymia means that they can't name their emotions and they can't decode their emotions. And all of that means that autistic children are profoundly disconnected from their own bodies. If people are saying to them, maybe the reason you feel disconnected from your body is because you're trans, of course they're going to say yes, because they look around them in schools and they see that being trans is a lot cooler and has a lot more social currency than just being disabled, being autistic. That's not cool at all. And all the while, schools aren't being trained in how to teach autistic children. They don't know anything about autism, most of them, and they certainly don't know anything about gender identity except what they are being told by organisations like Stonewall. Our children, our autistic disabled children deserve better.
I'm not an academic, but I am relatively well versed in the argy-bargy of discourse. Though first, a disclaimer. The tweet was about colonisation and third genders. I have only had a shallow dive into this, or more of a paddle really, so I guess some will say I should stay in my lane and not belly flop into notions from a shower of internet searches. But I'm going to define my lane, because we know a lot of people suffer from imposter syndrome, some more than others and some not enough. And they think they don't have a right to be heard. Again, maybe this applies to some more than others. I expect women would rank high on imposter syndrome and on feeling underconfident in speaking, in case they make an error, get the decimal point in the wrong place, and say 400% when they really mean 4,400%, because they can't quite believe the increase. However, the bar for expertise seems to have dropped this week. I'm not an expert, but at least I googled what I would be talking about, which is more than could be said for some. So my self-identified lane is as someone who is not claiming to be an expert, but who suspects a few leaks in the theory presented, and I am offering questions, not answers. Now, the tweet sent to me was about my failure to recognise the colonial impact on gender in colonised countries, like how the gender binary was forced upon these countries, and anyone outside this newly imposed construct was harmed. Before colonisation, people lived rather freely in their genders, I was told. Now, this has been discussed around and about before by people like Exelantic and Amy Souza, and there were no doubt layers of colonial scars in many places. So I do not dismiss the aspect of how the gender binary was forced upon countries, but I do not know enough to comment specifically on that. However, I would ask whether there is proof that many cultures rejected gender roles that still follow the line of sex. And were the Western colonists responsible for foot binding in China or burning widows in India? Or did those societies figure out that misogyny by themselves? Now, the notion that cultures with three genders are more free is worth poking. We know some authoritarian cultures like transing the gay away, and if you have to wonder, or you do have to wonder, if a culture is so egalitarian, were the male gender boundaries so narrowly drawn? Why were they so narrowly drawn? That there is no space for gender non-conforming males. Why were gender non-conforming males shunted off into a non-male space? Now, women here might remember Frigida Stour, and I apologise, I might have said her name wrong, from Samoa, who had what I think of as her gold medal taken by Laurel Hubbard in the 2019 Pacific Games. In Samoa, there is a third gender. The Fa'afafine are males who choose to adopt feminine traits of their culture. They are one of the third gender examples often raised. And in an episode of the excellent A Wider Lens podcast, the guest speaker, Paul Posie, said of the Fafafin and of the Mushe in Mexico, they are not trying to be women. They don't identify as women. They actively reject the label. They say, we are not women, we're Fafafin. We are not women, we are Mushe. They are fully aware that they are male-bodied, that they were born male, and this state of maleness is immutable. Bell wrote about the two-spirit identities in American Indian culture in 2013. And here's an extract. She said, "It's very strange to watch the contemporary trans movement attempt to incorporate American Indian cultural conceptions of gender non-conformity, because it's so clearly an attempt to shoehorn people of the past into contemporary cultural labels. In some third gender societies, two-spirit was simply a way to handle homosexuality within the group. Homosexual men were considered not fully men, a halfway gender that wasn't quite normal. In others, it was a way to handle intersex people in societies with rigid sex binaries. In still others, it was for men who specifically preferred women's work and roles, like weaving and cooking. In almost none of these societies did two-spirit people born male identify as women. We have no documented cases of two-spirit men anguishing over an inability to be fully recognised as a woman or to have a woman's body. They tended to identify as a different type of man or something between masculine and feminine. To systematically deprive historical two-spirit people of their own thoughts regarding their gender and what the historical record shows was their place in society, to misrepresent these people who were often oppressed within their groups rather than lauded for their non-conformity, in spite of the all too common hagiographic contemporary notion of American Indian nations as places free from oppression, is to erase the nuance of real history in favour of a conception of history in which really everyone just like you lucky 21st son of a gun, who has it all figured out. Now I have questions about these cultures. How did female and male spaces divide? And are religious gatherings and sports and other female spaces aligned on sex or gender? Which of these cultures totally endorse the fantasy that males are females? Because once upon a time in the 1980s, we were taught that the way to be a good person was to say that we didn't see race. The most unracist people were totally colourblind. And I was mulling this over and I remembered a comment by Amir Rahman or Nazim Hussain from Fear of a Brown Planet. It's a long time since I heard it, so I'm badly paraphrasing. They said at parties, white people would sometimes say to him, "I don't see race, I don't notice colour," but they would only ever say it to him and never to the other white people. Now colourblindness was popular in 2014 because almost 3/4 of millennials believed that we should not see the colour of someone's skin, as though it's a choice. Nearly 70% believed they had achieved this and were now actually colourblind. But this hot take has fallen out of fashion, and now it is thought that ignoring racism by professing not to see race can't solve racism. If you can't see race, you don't see racism. If you can't see sex, you don't see sexism. Now I know all political parties have women problems, and maybe I am a problem in the Green Party of England and Wales. I guess there are quite a few Greens here standing on the other side of history. Now our party is in the midst of examining its equality and diversity and inclusion with a view to improve matters by ramping up the inclusion. But here is my experience of inclusion in my political party. The leaders denigrating motions on sex-based rights and urging people not to vote for them. Calling members bigots and transphobes and suggesting the party is not for them. framing concerns over children being given puberty blockers and hormones as conversion therapy akin to torture, and calling a charity advocating for the rights of people who are same-sex attracted a hate group. Now, inclusion has become synonymous with pushing trans rights and policing women. So now more inclusion cannot mean those kind of actions. It will not work. Inclusion must give us space to speak about women as a sex class and sex as a protected characteristic. Equality cannot keep relegating women to second place. And there is even an attempt to push the L down the queer Q acronym, with some in the community adding the mystical two-spirit identity up front to form 2SLGBTQIA+. Now, yesterday at the Lesbian Strength March, the police said it may be unsafe for women to walk, and they were forced to give way to the thugs. A sorry state of affairs, and one we ignore to our detriment. So if you are on the fence, straddling, take a position, because as Christy Moore said, only the very safe can talk about wrong or right. For those who are forced to choose, some will choose to fight.